freaking first cut. Golly.
Welcome to the First Cut Podcast. I'm Rick Gehman, and this is your DFS preview for this week's Tour Championship, a very unique and different event on the schedule. Joining me to break it all down, Sia Nejad is here. Hello, Sia.
Hello. What a performance last week. I had him as an outright, a live outright, and I felt lucky to get it. But man, your guy, Rick, he just cooks. When he cooks, he cooks.
61 course record, 28 coming in, pitched basically a perfect game on the final 9. It was that was cool. Yeah, he was dialed for sure.
Really cool. And I got to tell you, I'm like kind of sad. You know, this is a weird time of just the season in general, not the golf season, but just like the DFS season, because we got football up ahead of us, which is really cool. But we're kind of in this sort of falling action phase of the PGA Tour season, and I don't like it. I like waking up on Monday and seeing pricing for a 156-man field, and we don't get that for a little bit, right, Rick?
What did you call it? Football? I've never.
Yeah, the American football with the pigskin and
never heard of
and stuff.
Interesting. I'll have to check it out this year.
Yeah, give it a look.
We are. Although I'll tell you what, we're probably only 2 weeks away. Right? I mean, the Fortinet is in like, I don't know the exact date of it, but we're going to get this a lot faster than most off seasons in sport. So don't fret. We will be back at it for the full fields here shortly. This 30 at the Tour Championship. If that wasn't interesting enough where you have to roster 20% of everybody in the field in every single lineup, the added layer of the starting strokes, Sia, is going to be something that comes into play for this week because not everybody starts at even par. In fact, only 5 guys start at even par, where Scotty Scheffler will begin the week at 10 under, Victor Hovland at 8 under, Rory McIlroy at 7, so on and so forth, all the way down. And they are going to start the week with their finishing position points. And if they get passed immediately, those will change. But there is a situation where guys will have points before the week starts. And also because of that, the range of salaries is sizable this week, 13,400 all the way down to 5K.
Yeah. And obviously I think anybody that's watching this like understands this is a big game theory situation and you have to, it's tough. I mean, Rick, it's funny that the first couple of years we've done the Tour Championship together doing this show, I've sort of been the guy that's like, no, somebody that's 3 under has 4 days, they can come back. Somebody that's 4 under, like they can come back. Golf, there's so much variance, all this stuff. And like, listen, like the data's there, but I didn't want to believe the data. I believe it now. Like you're preaching to the choir now, whereas maybe you weren't before. So I think from a DFS standpoint, and Rick, I mean, I'd love your opinion on this, obviously. That's why we do this show. So I'm not trying to pretend like I know the answers here, but I feel like you take one of the 4 top guys or maybe the 3 that you think can win, and that's it. And then you just jump down and you look for guys that are going to pile up like the birdies and the scoring, but also pile up the finishing position points. And I feel like with this 30-man group, there's sort of a dead zone because people will want to pile up like 2 really expensive guys. Then they'll go down to the 5K range to make their lineup work. And then they'll end up sort of somewhere living in the 7K range. I feel like there's a dead zone in that low 8K, mid 8K range where the lineup construction is just not going to allow for some people. And it's those people that are starting, and I'm going off memory here, like -2 or so, that do have the ability to climb and grab some finishing position points that they're not starting with.
Yeah, those are the guys that in past years, I think like Ches Reavie did it. He went from, 26th to 7th, or Mackenzie Hughes kind of did something similar, and they end up being in the optimal lineup. Those are the golfers that you start looking for. I think that there are probably 4 guys who can win and 2 who might be able to win. So like 4 and 2 halves is 5 is the way that I kind of look at this. It's the 4 at the top. And then I think it's probably Lucas Glover, Patrick Cantlay. That might be the end of the list, barring something crazy happening. But you're right, getting the winner and then getting who those big movers are, who the guys that are outperforming their expectation is going to be huge this week. So we'll jump into this. We'll talk. I'll show you the scorecard. We'll show the stats. We'll go through the cheat sheet and talk about where everybody is starting. Before we get too deep into it, I want to remind everyone, The one and done link is now live. Final event of the year, $7.2 million for the winner in our one and done. This is it. It's coming down to the stretch. If you are waiting to get your vote in, don't get it in right now, and that'll be revealed on Tuesday's mega preview pod. We'll continue this conversation, but first we're going to take a quick break and hear a word from our partners.
The man, the myth, the Messi. Catch Inter Miami take on FC Cincinnati in the U.S. Open Cup on the all-new Golazo Network.
Okay, so now we can really dive into this thing. Troy, if you want to share my screen, that'd be splendid. We'll start here with the scorecard. It's a par 70. It is 35 on both sides. It is East Lake. This is a golf course that we see all the time, Sia, but we only get it when it's down to the final 30. So it makes, when I want to run all the data, and like you kind of said, having 150 guys in round one, 150 in round two, and then 70 and 70 gives you a lot more shots, a lot more data to work with. There's plenty of years, but there's just significantly less shots and less data points. And the other problem is then a couple of years ago when they switched to the staggered start, it even changes a lot of golfers' opinions and motivation. So I think I might just be throwing the data out the window this week and just saying, give me the best guys for this, who are playing well right now.
Yeah, I mean, so I sort of have a bias to very recent form anyway. So this actually fits my air quotes model quite well when it comes to that. Yeah, definitely looking for recent form. I mean, also the course conditions might be different this week than what we saw, for example, last year and the year before in terms of, how dry the course is and things of that nature. So yeah, I'm really, first of all, this is a huge game theory situation here. But to the extent you're actually analyzing the golfers, let's analyze who's hot and who hasn't been hot that people might not play, but we know that they can turn it on. I think Matt Fitzpatrick is an interesting example from last week. I didn't touch that dude. I wasn't going to touch that dude. And for the record, I don't think he's a superstar either. So I don't really feel bad about just completely fading him, which I shouldn't have in a game theory 50-person situation. But I look at a guy like Jon Rahm, for example, who is a superstar. And by the way, no disrespect to Matt Fitzpatrick. I just don't think he's Jon Rahm, Scotty Scheffler, Rory McIlroy, Victor Hovland. I think Rahm is one of those guys that people will absolutely avoid. Not completely. He's going to have some ownership. It's a 30-person field. But, he was bad last week. He's been bad in the playoffs. Look at his metrics. Every single round, he was bad. I mean, it's not like there was in the fourth round, he started to pick it up. Nope, that didn't happen for Jon Rahm. But I do think there are guys like that the recent form might be off. But because this is so game theory intensive, I might decide, hey, let's say I'm running out 5 lineups. I might decide a couple of them have Jon Rahm at the top, and that's it. And then I bury myself in sort of that 9K, 8K range and hope I have the winner in Rahm and a bunch of guys that are going to pass some people with finishing position points.
8 golfers over $10,000, 4 of them over 11,000, 2 of them over 13,000, led by Scotty Scheffler at 13,400. This is my website, rickrungood.com. This is the cheat sheet. Scheffler 13,400, Rory 13,000. Victor at 12.5, Jon Rahm at 11.6. Then you go down and get Max Homa at 10.9, Patrick Cantlay at 10.8, Xander Schauffele at 10.5, and Matt Fitzpatrick at a flat 10,000. Let's start with the big 4 at the top, Sia. Scheffler will start at 10 under par. He will begin the week with his 30 finishing position points. Victor Hovland is 8 under. He'll start 2 shots back. Rory 3 back, and Jon Rahm 4 shots behind the lead before a single shot is hit.
Yeah, I mean, to me, this goes back to the Rahm point I was making. It's really hard to argue with Scotty Scheffler, Rory, or Victor Hovland at this point. And again, I think the ownership's going to be a little funky, a little quirky going into this tournament. But I mean, I think we can all assume that those 3 are going to grab a lot of ownership. I think Scotty at 10 under is probably going to be sort of the most owned, and that makes sense because of his starting strokes, and he is probably the best in the world. But I think for me, Rory's the one that sticks out to me. I mean, the experience at East Lake is great, but I also, Rory was my pick to win last week. I thought he played just fine. We know he's been in elite form, notwithstanding the fact that we probably should see more wins there. Don't forget he did win at the Scottish Open, but I think Rory's my guy in the top 4. And I think what I might do is I think I might have to take a stand. Like Rory, again, if I'm rolling out 5 or 6 lineups, Rory in 3 of them. Maybe I go for a little bit of a contrarian move with Jon Rahm in 1 or 2 of them.
So the tee to green / putting metrics have been well covered for Scotty Scheffler. The one thing that I will point out that I think is worth a concern, obviously he's putting not very well recently, but if you look at his 3 trips to Eastlake, he has never figured these surfaces out. He lost 2.6 in 2020. He lost 6 on the greens in 2021 and 3 last year. So he has lost a combined, what is that? 4 and 9, like 10 strokes, almost 11 strokes putting in 3 trips to the Tour Championship. So that right there is certainly concerning. Now, does that offset a 2-shot lead? I don't necessarily think so, especially if he's going to be really popular, because we've seen it countless times at this event. That 2-shot lead might last 3 holes, right? Yeah. It might literally last 3 holes. And the floor is much higher for Scotty Scheffler, but it is not a guarantee that he ends the week with those 30 finishing position points, like I think a lot of people kind of assume it is.
Yeah, and it's such a like two-sided argument, because I think one is your argument that you always kind of start out with when we get to the Tour Championship was, listen, there's not a lot of people that can catch Scotty Scheffler. But then we look at round 4 last week, and when we're talking about elite golfers, Victor Hovland was -8, Scotty Scheffler was -11 yesterday to start the day, and Hovland ends up winning by 2. Now, granted, Hovland had an extremely low score, but with that said, I do think when it comes to the elite golfers, there's so many in play that not so many, but there's at least a few in play that can catch Scotty Scheffler. Maybe, in my opinion, close to 4. I don't know that I put Glover there, but I think I put Cantlay and the 3 guys we just talked about on that list.
I do think the next 2, Rory, Victor, are probably more interesting. Rory McIlroy, 1.44 strokes gained per round in 36 rounds at Eastlake. Nobody as good as him in the sample size that he has. Obviously, 3 times a winner of the FedEx Cup, looking for his 4th this time around. What I think is interesting about Rory is he has been very good at he's been very good at beating almost everyone. And when you're playing in some of these, full field events, you've got to be perfect. And Rory hasn't been perfect. There's only 29 other golfers in this field, and there's only maybe 5 or 6 others that have a realistic chance of winning this golf tournament. I think it's just like winning. It's just like winning a fantasy football league or a one and done that has 10 people or a one and done that has 1,000 people. Like, which one is going to be harder to win? I think the condensed nature of this is really, really good for Rory because the floor is so freaking high.
I agree. When you put it like that, when you get the betting options where they'll give you all sites do this, like Group A, and they have all the elite players in Group B. I think Rory, if you put him in Group A, it's going to be like, I'm talking from a betting standpoint, it's going to be Rory with Scotty, with Jon Rahm, with Patrick Cantlay, let's say, and who am I missing?
Like Victor, probably.
Victor, of course, Victor Hovland. And I don't know what his odds would be there, but he'd probably be second in that grouping. And I think it's completely fair, especially knowing that, Hovland coming off a win. I guess you could make the argument that, he won't stay as hot, but I think he's in the conversation, but I think you could like maybe X out Rahm and Cantlay just because their play hasn't been as good. I think Roy's very live to win this tournament.
Yeah, so just quickly on Victor, 2 wins in his last 7 starts. The ball striking stuff phenomenally. Probably should have won in Memphis too if he didn't punt it away on 18 there over the course of the week. I do want to bring up Cantlay because I think that his stat profile is also pretty interesting around Eastlake. So he won this event in 2021, but it was really in no thanks to the putter or the short game, because in 5 trips he's never gained strokes putting here, and he's lost 6 or more over 4 rounds 3 out of those 5 times. So when I see something like this, pretty big sample size that we have brewing, I think a lot of people will be like, well, yeah, he won here and he finished 7th last year, but this is ugly. And that's 7th. He started much higher than that. This is a pretty ugly stat profile when you think about it.
Yeah, if we didn't have Patrick Cantlay's like name and picture next to that, I think we'd be like, well, I'm not playing this guy. Right. So, the short game altogether was pretty bad there. But yeah, the putter, that's concerning to me. To be honest, I'm not planning on playing Cantlay in my lineup. So that's just further evidence for that.
You kind of foreshadowed a couple of thoughts on Matt Fitzpatrick. I'd like to get those now.
Well, Matt Fitzpatrick was one of those guys where as each round went by last week, I was like, oh, shoot. Like, it was so obvious to play Matt Fitzpatrick since nobody was going to play him. But that doesn't mean I'm jumping on him this week. I mean, I don't really. Again, I'm grabbing a guy at the top and maybe a guy that's sort of towards the top in my main lineups, if you will. And then I'm going to try to live in that 8-9K range. And there's just no way I'm going to have room to pay up 10,000 for Matt Fitzpatrick in that case. And for the record, I don't really trust the game. Great job last week. But when we're talking about the guys he's priced around, I really have no interest.
I do think it is a little fool's goldie. It's one of his best putting rounds in years on the PGA Tour or anywhere in the world for that matter, in at least a year. So I do worry a little bit about that. The Homa Cantlay Xander Fitzpatrick area is fascinating. There's a clear drop from the four guys at the top who are better players, who will start in better finishing positions, that I will find it difficult. It's early on a Monday. I mean, maybe I'll figure this out as the week goes on, but I'm going to find it pretty difficult to get access to any of those four just because of the way this starts to build out.
So it's tough, right? So let's say you start with Hovland, and then, so I think Max Homa is the guy in that group that definitely gets squeezed, right? Because Matt Fitzpatrick at least has the benefit of being the cheaper of the four. Patrick Cantlay, people just want to play Patrick Cantlay for obvious reasons. And Xander has really good, from a track record standpoint, is really good for me. So like, I think Max Homa is the guy that like people just aren't going to want to pay 10,900 for. And if you start your lineup with, let's say, Hovland, which you're making a concession right there, and Max Homa, it leaves you with 6,650. And then it puts you in a position to have that standard build that I was suggesting maybe you don't want to get yourself into, where then you feel like you have to grab 2 5K guys just to get yourself back into a relevant golfer, which if I do that, take 2 low 5K guys, it gets me back to 8,000 for my last 2. And I don't know that that's the build I want to do, especially with 2 low end guys that probably aren't going to chase down much by way of finishing points. So my take is that's all the more reason to maybe consider Homa, because I just don't think the standard build is going to want to include him.
Interesting. Okay. Well, we're going to talk about those guys at the bottom here in a little bit. The 9K range is very small. It's Lucas Glover, who's going to start at 5 under. He's 9,700. Brian Harman, who's going to start at 4 under. He's 95. Ricky Fowler is 9,000. And for some reason, my brain skipped Wyndham Clark at $9,100. That's it. A lot of good, a lot of bad, a lot of indifferent here. What's the play out of these 4 golfers?
So I think Lucas Glover is interesting. I don't think I'm going to play him at 9,700. I do think he's out of gas a little bit. Respectable finish, 22nd last week. That's fine. But I think he's fine, but I just don't think I'm going to end up playing him. I think Harman is really interesting. I think Clark and Fowler are interesting. Of the 4, it's Ricky Fowler, and it might be Brian Harman for me. I think Ricky Fowler is actually my favorite in that group at -3, because I think he's a guy at 9,000, that might fall inside a bit of a dead zone, by the way, and has the ability at 3 under with some good rounds behind him to really chase down potentially 3rd place position points.
I'm worried about Ricky. Since the win, he has not been very good from tee to green. He's lost with the putter in his last 2. These last 4 finishes are basically his worst 4 finishes of the year. Now that is also a testament to how good his year has been, because he's been just piling up a bunch of top 20s, and his last 4 all happen to be outside, the top 20. So it's not the end of the world, but you mentioned Lucas Glover might be running out of gas. That's what I see out of Ricky Fowler's profile.
It's true. I was really encouraged by him last week, but can we go round by round on Ricky Fowler? Because he must have had a bad round 4. I didn't really have I was solely focused on sort of the top of the board, but he must have had a bad round 4 or a bad weekend.
Saturday. So he got off to a good start. He gained 3.7 on Thursday. He added nearly another half a stroke on Friday. Then he gave most of that back on Saturday, losing 3.3. And then he had another losing day on Sunday as well. So he did definitely fade on the weekend.
Yeah, definitely faded on the weekend. Again, I think he's a guy that sort of falls in a squeeze dead zone. And to be honest, between him and Max Homa, I would rather save the 1,900 and play Ricky, knowing that people aren't going to be super encouraged by his recent play.
I think Brian Harman's my favorite. He's just doing Brian Harman things, and now he's playing with house money a little bit, right? I mean, he's got 5 top 12 finishes in his last 6, which include a claret jug and a runner-up, and played well last week. When he has not played often here, and it hasn't been very good. Last year he lost about a stroke and a half, and then 2017, which I think we can throw out the window, 5.5 strokes he lost to the field at Eastlake. He's only played here twice, but I think he's the guy that kind of starts moving us in the right direction. Glover, I could take or leave. I don't have much of a feel on. Wyndham Clark is the most interesting because I just don't know. I have no idea. If Wyndham Clark finished 30th, I wouldn't be surprised. And if he made a run up the board and finished third, I wouldn't be surprised.
How did he finish T15 with? I mean, it wasn't a great tournament for Wyndham Clark, as far as I remember. And the metrics don't speak to him having a great tournament either.
Kind of all over the place. Yeah. Good Thursday, good Saturday, bad Friday, kind of bad Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, decent short game kind of helped him out there. But no, I'm definitely a fade on Wyndham Clark. Like when I look at that range, I agree with you on Harman. I would rather pay up there, or I'd rather just pay down to Ricky Fowler, or we're going to get into this next zone, Tommy Fleetwood, who should be popular because that's sort of the beginning of the dead zone to me once you get under Tommy Fleetwood. But I mean, I'd rather go Tommy Fleetwood than Wyndham Clark there.
All right, well, we'll do the 8Ks, Troy, and then we'll hit a break. So we'll continue to run through this here and kind of flip it up a little bit because there's only 4 guys in the 8K range: Fleetwood, Sung Jae, Russell Henley, Keegan Bradley. I'll just give you a T here on Tommy Fleetwood. Last 36 rounds, Sia, the raw strokes gained, best players in this field: Rory McIlroy, number 1, Scotty Scheffler, number 2, Victor Hovland, number 3, Tommy Fleetwood, number 4. Tommy is dangerously close to that 2 strokes per round number, which is an astonishing number. He's at 1.99. So there's the T for Tommy Fleetwood, who you seem to be pretty encouraged about.
And he's another guy that is at 3 under with Ricky Fowler, that if they have their A game, and Rick, I know how you break this down, like you use statistics way better than I do in terms of like your matrix and probabilities and percentile like type outcome. If Fleetwood and I probably like butchered all of those words, but if Fleetwood and Fowler like have their high percentile outcomes and they chase down like the guys who were in 3rd and 4th place, so they move from -3 to, and they end up, instead of getting those finishing position points, they end up getting like 3rd or 4th place finishing position points. You get those 2 guys who are relatively cheap with whatever winner you pick. And if that ends up being the guy, whether it's Scotty or Rory or what have you, like that is the makings to me of a really good start to a lineup.
Yeah. And Tommy has shown, the +12 at the US Open strokes gained, that is the +15 at the Canadian Open, the 11 that he gained at Quail Hollow. If he puts together one of those this week, he will probably get into maybe the top 5 or something like that, which would be a pretty significant move for him. I just love every single week I stare at Russell Henley's stat profile, and I'm in awe, right? The event he shoulda, woulda, coulda won at the Wyndham Championship. Well, runner up there, 6th in Memphis, 8th at the BMW Championship. Last 8 rounds, last 12 rounds, he's one of the best players in the field. And then even before that, he was piling up those top 20s. He just never stops doing the same thing every single week. And he's got a lot better history around Eastlake. Granted, his most recent trip was 2017. His start before that was 2014, but he lives right around Atlanta. I think he lives in Columbus, Georgia. 11.5 strokes gained. He's picked up in 8 rounds at Eastlake in his career, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say he probably plays it more frequently than twice in the last 9 years.
Yes, I would go out on that limb as well. Listen, I love the stat profile, and I love a lot of these guys in the 3 under range. I think these are the guys where you're hoping for those just high end, like nearly outlier outcomes where they start passing people. I think in that conversation is Henley, is Fleetwood, and even Ricky Fowler.
So the guy that breaks the slate, the guy that wins you all the money, the guy who's in all the optimals will likely be like somebody in this 2 or 3 under range. And then they go up and they finish 5th or 6th or something like that. And because remember, you're going to get all those scoring points, all those hole by hole points where somebody might make a lot more birdies than Scotty Scheffler does. And the only difference is going to be the finishing position points. But if you can close the gap on 20 for second and get yourself 12 or 14, you can score way more than those guys by making 3 more birdies. So this is kind of the slate breaking range we're looking at.
And for the record, those 3 guys you can put in a lineup with whoever you want as the winner, whether it's Scotty or Roy or Victor Hovland or even Jon Rahm. You can literally take one of those guys. You can put the 3 guys we just talked about, which are in that 8-ish to low 9K range, and then you'll still have money to fill out your lineup. So again, I'm not saying that's the optimal strategy, but I think all 3 of those guys, some more than others, like Fleetwood, I would put probably at the top of the list, have the ability to charge and like take down a 3 spot at the end of the tournament.
Okay, we're going to continue this conversation with the real value on the board, the 7s, the 6s, and the 5s, but we're going to take a quick break and hear a word from our partners.
For something. First play of the game to the last play of the game. 1, 2, 3.
And we got 2 of the hottest houses. This is big time college ball.
They're going to come. We're going to come.
2 big boys getting ready to play.
Big, being the operative word here.
And here they come.
And we're back. $7,000 range. Corey Connors, Tom Kim, Colin Morikawa, Tony Finau, Jason Day, and Siwoo Kim Sia. That's the group that we've got to kind of figure out what to do with. They all start at either 2 or 1 under par.
So another couple of guys that I think are, especially at the top, that are in kind of a dead zone where you might be able to get them at lower ownership because of how the builds are just naturally going to go with a couple guys at the top, and people are just going to be desperate to go down to that low 5K range. I think Tom Kim is the most interesting. Listen, Colin Morikawa at 7,700, I'm not going to argue with you there. I've been unimpressed with Colin Morikawa. I think most people would say that. Tom Kim's interesting because he started the tournament off so poorly, Rick. And you know how you say this all the time where like somebody has a bad, but granted, this wasn't a cut situation. So it's a little less of an effect, but somebody has a bad Thursday or Friday and they get completely written off because it's like, oh, this guy's like tanking my lineup. He was good on the weekend. He was great in round 4. The
only thing that people remember are the first 9 holes on Thursday and the last 9 holes on Sunday. And if your guy played whatever happened in the middle there never wants to get considered for anything. It's crazy. It's like, oh, this guy coughed it up. It's like, well, yeah, he played outside of his mind to get there on Sunday. Or, oh my gosh, Tom Kim bogeyed 3 of his first 5 holes. He stinks. But I didn't check to see that he finished T10 last week.
So I hate to put you to the test here, but round 4 at Olympia Fields, outside of Victor Hovland, I think he might have been like inside the top 3 or 4 in terms of total strokes gained.
Just in the final round?
Just in the final round.
All right. Well, here we'll go to the live leaderboard from last week and we'll just isolate round 4. It's already sorted by strokes gained total. Yeah. So Victor Hovland, number 1, 7.6. And then Russell Henley and Tom Kim tied. They shot the same score for 5.69 strokes gained per round, which was pretty. I mean, listen, those 3 guys were head and shoulders above the rest of the field, right? It was 7.5, 5.5, 5.5. Then just one guy at 3.5, and then a bunch of 2.5. So, Tom Kim and Russell Henley figured it out on Sunday. And if you look at Tom Kim, this is what we wanted in January. This is what we expected when he won twice, in the fall, because now he's gone. Just his last 4 are 6th runner-up, 24th, 10th. That's a major, 2 playoff events, and the Scottish Open. You go back a couple of starts, you get to the U.S. Open where he finished T8. This is what we wanted from Tom Kim all year long. He's finally doing it.
And for the record, he's a longer hitter than people think. Like he really truly has added distance off the tee. So I think that's something to keep in mind. You got this par 70 around 7,300 yards. I would classify it, and I don't know the details on this. It's a little longer than PGA Tour average. Am I right?
Set par 70, 7,300. Yes. Yeah. So
with that in mind, Tom Kim should be a fine course fit. And if he's hot with the putter like he was the last 2 days at Olympia Fields, I think he's a great find at 7,900. And again, I don't think that range is going to be super popular because of constructions. And if it is, I think people would naturally more likely go to Colin Morikawa than they would, let's say, Corey Connors or Tom Kim.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. Both Corey Connors and Tom Kim, I like. I hate what Corey Connors has done here at Eastlake, but he plays out of the fairway. The results are piling up. If everybody is going to rather go to Morikawa or Tony Finau, who everybody can't seem to give up on, or whatever else that might be. Those two guys are very, very interesting to me.
Yeah, in this entire range, those two guys are probably my favorite, with Tom Kim being like the clear-cut number one for me. Of course, I kind of like Colin Morikawa. I'm okay with that. But the rest of the guys, I'm just not interested in. I think Siwoo Kim is kind of in a dead zone as well, so he's interesting for that reason. Jason Day, I guess you could make the same argument. But Tony Finau, Jason Day, Siwoo Kim, they probably don't see my lineup.
I mean, Finau and Day have not been good. Siwoo is at least capable of showing up and shooting like something crazy under par.
Yeah.
The 6K range, only 4 golfers here. A couple of big names, though. Terrell Hatton, 69. Jordan Spieth, 67. Taylor Moore at 65. And then Sam Burns at 61. So here's where I think a lot of people are going to go for that salary cap relief. Sia, you've got a couple of big names like Hatton and Spieth. Burns, who, shot a 62 at one point last week, setting the course record before Victor got it on Sunday. That's where I think most will go for salary cap relief. Do you agree with that statement?
I agree, but I think the leadoff hitter for that salary cap relief in this range is Sam Burns, because it's such a different price tag, 6,100 versus the 6,900 for Hatton. I think people are intrigued by Hatton at 6,900. I just think like most of the builds, I would say probably like the less sophisticated builds are just going to, and listen, this is how I built first too. So I'm not like trying to make fun of anybody.
The less sophisticated builds
I should say it this way. The builds that people will jump at initially are 2 really expensive guys that they really like. And what that is going to end up doing is go down. You're going to have to go down to you can't, like, Hatton's not going to give you that relief. Burns to a degree will give you that relief, but it's the 5K guys that are in play in those types of builds. And then it gets you back into that like 8K, 7K range. So I think Burns is the most intriguing for me because of his price and because we know he can get hot.
This is a range, and we'll just go to the rest of these guys. Grillo, Sepp Straka, Adam Schenk, Nick Taylor. This is a range that I want pure upside, right? I mean, there's nowhere for them to go, right? They're at the bottom. Mm-hmm. They're starting at the bottom of the board. They're not getting many finishing position points. They can't even lose. The guys who started even can't even lose finishing position points. They're going to start with 3 and they're going to end with 3 if they don't move up. So why not just find the sickest upside guys? And the way that I was looking at this earlier is I went to the strokes gain distribution here, and I was just looking at guys who gain 5 or more strokes to the field more frequently than they should. And there's a couple that stand out, right? Like Keegan Bradley, super low floor, super high ceiling. Jason Day, similar. You'll see Sepp Straka's name pop up here. His Sepp Straka's ceiling is the same as Patrick Cantlay's. Sepp Straka's floor is like the worst in the field, right? Like that's what we're looking for. Grillo would pop up here as well. So there's just no like they can barely hurt you. You know what I mean? Like you might as well, like, no wonder I'm going to be living down here.
Well, Straka and Schenk are my 2 favorite down there, and it's not even close.
Yeah.
Schenk is one of those guys where he can get like almost in like a Sepp Straka type way. He can ruin your lineup and he'll miss the cut in a traditional event, or he'll end up like T4. It's just one of those situations. So Straka and Schenk are clearly my favorite in the low 5K range, or the 5K range.
If you can look past the bad, Adam Schenk has 5 top 10s in his last 10 starts. 50% of his last 10 starts are top 7 finishes.
I mean, it speaks to the fact that he's even in this field, right? Like, you have to be really good. You have to have piled up the FedEx Cup points to even be in this field. And what's so cool about Schenk is he didn't do it early in the fall swing. That's not when he got the points. He did it like at like most of, they weren't all designated events, mind you, but some of these really truly elevated, solid field events. And he's been really good.
Anything else from a kind of whole perspective? There's only 30 players in the field. You're going to have to roster 6 out of 30, 20% of the field in every single lineup. I agree with you that there is a lot of game theory. I agree with you that there is a lot of roster construction considerations to make for this week. Anything that we have not mentioned that we should have by this point?
I don't think so. I mean, I think I would say just recognize, I've said it 4 times already, but recognize where the natural builds are going to lead to, regardless of who actually gets picked. And it's going to lead to, one thing I did with one of my lineups, Rick, and I basically did what I said people shouldn't do. I had 2 expensive guys, I had 2 5K guys, and then I messed around in the middle a little bit. And what I did, I made the lineup. Then I was like, all right, I'm going to take one of these 5K guys out of my lineup. I'm going to take one of the 8K guys that I picked, and I'm going to take him out of my lineup. And so I just basically had what I thought was like a chalk build, not a chalk lineup, but at least a chalk build. I took 2 guys out of it that I knew were going to be in like similar ranges as people were going to take. And then I took the 8,800 guy, and I dropped him all the way down to I picked like a 7,700 guy. And it allowed me to take the 5K guy that I had and actually flirt with the low 7K range, which I thought was kind of like that dead zone range, that mid 7K range. So that's how I did it, just to try to be different. Of course, you could leave money on the table and stuff like that, but those are the mental impressions I'm going through when I'm building.
You know what I saw this week that I thought about getting into there? So usually there's usually that $200 single entry. There is a $250 4 max, Sia, that I was like, wow, I haven't seen that before. Is that new this week?
Oh no, I think that's been there all year. I don't play in that one. But I'm pretty sure that's been there all year.
Have my eyes just gone right past it? Because I saw it immediately this morning and was like, oh my God, that's awesome. I did not know that existed.
I'm pretty sure it's
Maybe
been
I
there.
have filters on or something. I'm an idiot. All right.
I could be the idiot here, but I'm pretty sure, like when you said that, I was like, yeah, I know what contest you're talking about. So I'm pretty sure I've seen that for a while.
I think it's me then. Okay. Well, we've gotten here sooner than normal, but there's only 30 guys in the field. So let's get to the strokes gain narrative portion of the show. Troy, I believe we have 5 of these this week. 3 separate slides. So we'll start with Eric David, who says August brings the Pro Football Hall of Fame induction and the FedEx Cup playoffs. These 6 would be really good 2-sport athletes. Okay, 2-sport athletes. Quick glance, they look like golf and football crossovers. So we will start with Patrick Cantlay Mahomes. Boom. Are there any 2 people on planet Earth more different than Patrick Cantlay and Patrick Mahomes? If you stuck those 2 in a room, what in the world would they talk about?
They'd find a way, because Mahomes is so gregarious and like he'd figure it out, but it would even be hard for him to figure it out, I think. Brian close to the best.
Brian Harmon Dawkins. Okay, I like that little Philadelphia Eagles action there. Keegan Bradshaw. Sure. Easy. Tony Finau Gonzalez. Oh, a couple of potential those are some good targets. Get Tony Finau as a tight end, let him run around a little bit.
There you go.
I'm not familiar with, is it Sammy Burns, Baugh?
That's right. Sammy Baugh used to be a quarterback for Washington, actually, way back in the day. We're talking like,
I was going to say, that's got to be a long time ago.
Yeah.
Okay. And Lawrence Taylor Moore. Wow. Okay. Very strong, Eric. Well done. Tyler says, as a Georgia native, I'm aware how hot it's going to be this week. Yeah. So are these guys: Tommy Heatwood, Victor Hotland, Scorchy Scheffler, Sammy Sunburns, Emiliano Grilled-O, and Terrell Sun Hatton. Very creative.
That was one of 2 sort of weather-related hot lineups. Tim Thomas was the other one. His didn't make it because Tybo got in first. That
was very, very creative. Okay, next, Troy. Oracle says, in honor of 2022 season ending, it's the 2023 season, but that's okay, Oracle. or is this a year late on the 2022 season ending?
Maybe he's playing chess.
He's playing chess. See you next year, Woo Kim. Patrick can't lay my feet up till Monday. Jason, season's over on Sunday. Taylor, no more 2023 season. Max going home till next season. And Tony Finau, I have to play with my 5 kids. Well done. Ryan, the fantasy bunker. Georgia is known as the Hollywood of the South. Is that true?
I don't know. But
I think that is true. I think they give a lot of tax breaks if you film there.
Oh, that's a thing for sure.
I think that's a big thing. Yeah, that's right. So here are a few of Ryan's favorite shows and movies filmed here. Okay, so kind of double action. John Remember the Titans. Emiliano Grilozark. The Sung Jae Internship. Adam Shankerman 2. Wow. Shankerman is strong.
Next level.
Ford versus Ferrari McElroy, and driving Miss Dae-Si Woo Kim.
Bravo.
Well done. Well done, Ryan. Finally, one more to go. And it is, it's him. It's him. We found him. John Markowski. Atlanta headquarters for Home Depot. Didn't know that. So these are taglines for local contractors. Patrick, we can't lay carpet, but do all else. Sungjae, we aim to improve, impact, impress. Adam, hire us now, shank us later. John, always ROM to upgrade. We're fleet of foot and fleet of wood. Siwoo, hire us. Siwoo, smile. That was sweet. Well done. Well done, narrative writers. Hashtag SG narrative for all of them. You can send them to Sia. You can send them to the first cut. I wanted to look up, before I let you out of here, Sia, I wanted to look up what the actual date was for the Fortinet here. So it is September 14th. So this week will be 28th. So it'll be 1 week off, 2 weeks off, 2 weeks off.
Roger that.
Anything else before we get out of here?
I think we covered it. I think it'll be an interesting tournament.
Mega preview pod on Tuesday. Round by round recaps Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Big thanks to producer Troy, does all the hard work behind the scenes. Sia Nejad available on Twitter at Sia Nejad. You can find me at Rick Run Good. This has been The First Cut. We'll catch you next time.